just like seeing her for the first time.
Tian meanwhile lowered his sword and stood still, and then flames started coming out of his mouth, immediately followed by a powerful burst of energy that released all the flames out. After that, the fire gradually began to die down, and he sighed, thinking that it was dangerous. If he didn't release all his power, he would lose his sanity. He looked down at his trembling hand and thought that this was only the second time this had happened since his awakening. He was finally able to use this skill normally. After that, he looked at Junio, thinking that he was wrong. He was not an ordinary Rukant. Once his ability was discovered, the entire world would focus on him. This thought made him feel uneasy, and he decided to look at Arachne's chopped-up corpse. Again, Mick came closer and also looked at it, and noticing the purple aura, he thought that there was an incredible amount of mana. It can't even be compared to other dungeon bosses with a bug. He turned to Tian and asked if he felt anything from this. Corpse hair replied that it was not. So she was definitely dead. They got rid of her remains, so she is no longer alive. Mick found out that even a high-ranking hunter cannot feel this mana, and came closer, after which his passive skill activated, and the aura began to move into his body. The magic gauge was completely filled, and the system reported that units of mana out of were currently accumulated. If the amount of magic collected exceeds the limit, a reward will be received. He received a new skill, demonic weapon production. This is an active skill that uses units of accumulated mana to create weapons from the demon world at the moment. He has 0 demonic weapons stored. They are stored upon creation and can be materialized without using mana. He can use this skill once per day. He thought that he can't even imagine what a demon world weapon would be. He doesn't have any memories of the demon world. Could it be what he thinks? It's a pity that the reward is not related to mana, but that's not bad either. The magic gauge has reset to units, and he thought that thanks to Arachne, he already got half of the required amount, and it seems that the reward ends here. Suddenly, Tian interrupted his thoughts. He called out to him and said that he had something to tell him. MC turned to him, asking what's wrong, and he replied that he wanted to apologize. He bowed to him and said that despite his refusal, he still continued to ask him to join the guild. It was impolite, even though he was the guild leader. Clearly not expecting this, Denel was slightly surprised, and the man closed his eyes and said that he wanted to apologize for this. He was realistic. Mick felt uneasy and asked, what is he doing all of a sudden? At that moment, the team leader looked in their direction and nervously wondered, what is he seeing now? Yun Tian, bowing his head to a drank assistant, judging by his abilities, he is clearly not an ordinary person. He must be a hidden element of the Overkill Guild. Suddenly, his thoughts were interrupted by the swordsman's voice, causing him to flinch and immediately turn around. The guy waved his hand with a smile and said that it was dangerous. They of everything. There is nothing else here. The girl who was walking next to him shared her thoughts that Arachne must have absorbed all the monsters in the dungeon. Before the guy looked down at his disappearing sword and asked, is he intent? An amazing weapon. They can cut monsters and do not waste energy at all. She agreed with his words and said, Thatch had never heard of a weaponsmith who could do such a thing. Is he from the Overkill Guild? Suddenly, the team leader abruptly ran up to them and hugged them with his arms, nervously asking them to leave so that he could contact the association. The guy became worried and asked in confusion why exactly they should go already. The girl agreed with him and said that she wanted to thank the guildmaster and assistant first. The leader excitedly waved his hands and suggested that they quickly leave this disgusting place. The swordsman was confused and replied that they understood, so he should stop pushing. After that, the team leader led them to the exit and glanced at the rest with thought that despite the fact that this assistant connection with the Overkill Guild was obvious, they had better leave. If they interfered with the affairs of a large guild, there would be no end to trouble. Whatever the emergency, to unleash such a force so easily is not like the big guilds that place a high priority on safety. Newell sighed heavily at this time and agreed to talk, then said that even though he used the rental contract, the guild leader shouldn't bow his head to someone unknown. Tian said that the guild wouldn't bother him anymore, and of course he wouldn't. I thought about this statement doesn't mean that they've given up. This is his first chance. MC crossed his arms over Hishis, looking at him doubtfully, and he extended his hand and offered to make a contract saying that he's sure he'll like the terms. A new day arrived. Andy came to the Overcoat Guild building and met Hesu in the reception area. She said that she was glad to meet him again, and then introduced herself today. She's the one in charge of making the contract. Junio thanked her and said that the guild leader said that he would contact him immediately, but who knew it would be next morning. She replied that the leader said to prepare everything as soon as possible. He asked where they had come this far. She replied that this was Overo's special reception room, a place with particularly high security, so he didn't have to worry about privacy. She placed a contract on the table and asked him to read it. These were the conditions that the guild leader had told him in the dungeon. It would take time, but he could change the contents of the contract, so he shouldn't be shy about saying it. MC took the contract and read it carefully, and then thought, with a smile, that just like he had set in the dungeon, now that everything was set up, it felt more real. Placed the contract back on the table and said that he had no questions and that they could continue when they were discussing the conditions of the contract in the dungeon. Junio was confused that the guild would support him, and Tian clarified that it wasn't official support, but secret support. Of course, this was an assumption, but Hivigly understood why he didn't want to join the guild. For a number of reasons, he needed to hide his identity. If he's right, then his suggestion might help. They could secretly provide him with the materials. He needs equipment, ingredients, gate res. It doesn't matter, he needs to sign a contract. For the sake of formality, everything will be supplied secretly. Of course. MC asked why such kindness. All of a sudden, he replied that of course, it's not just like that he will have to do the quests given to him. Personally, those are his conditions. Buth won't force him if he doesn't like the quest, so he can refuse. Junio let out a chuckle and asked what if he doesn't help him, but just receive his support. He replied that that's fine. To the point of the contract is primarily to create a bond between the guild and him, preventing him from joining others. Accepting support is nothing more than a sign of his loyalty. That's all. Suddenly loud footsteps were heard from the side, and they looked in the direction of the sound. The association members ran up to them and said that they were from the Hunter Association squad. One of them clicked on the guildmaster and asked if he was okay, realizing it was time to leave. Tian turned around and told Junio that he would listen to his answer outside. He hoped that the answer would be yes. If he had burdened him too much, then he should not answer. Finally he turned around and added with a smile that for him his ability was the best. Thinking back on this, MC took out APN and thought that according to his plan, he wanted to leave a lasting impression on Tian and continue his relationship with the Overkill Guild without joining it, but for now, it would still be useful for him. He signed his name and handed her the document, asking when he could start receiving support. She replied that from now on he should let her know if he needed anything. She took out a small box from her purse and placed it on the table, saying that the guild master had prepared a gift for him as a keepsake for the contract. She heard that he found something useful in Eric's room. Junio was curious and opened the box. Mana started coming out and closed it and put it in his backpack, thanking her with a smile. He handed her a list of the materials he needed at the moment and asked when he could get it. She looked at the list and replied that there were a lot of things, so she thought it would be possible in a week. However, maybe she was meddling in none of her business, but she felt that these materials wouldn't be useful to him. He got up from the couch and put his backpack on, replying that he wasn't going to use it, he just wanted to give it to someone else. Time passed and he went to the Hunter Association to see Simeon. He took out his phone and looked at the time, thinking that she should have arrived by now. Then a shy girl entered the association, and he smiled, thinking that Hunteron Ya had finally arrived. The girl walked hesitantly towards the front desk, but in her future memories, she had a completely different personality when she fought monsters and shot arrows at them, making huge holes in their bodies. She was very confident in her abilities after the players were selected. This genius Huntress was called the Archer Goddess. Now, without taking her eyes off Thefler, she walked up to the front desk and turned to the association staff, saying that she wanted to request a training pass to the gate. She gave him her ID card, and the girl asked with a smile, since she was an A-rank hunter's. They give her a C-rank gate. She refused and said with an awkward smile that she would like to get a pass to Thed-rank gate G, which surprised the association staff. The man looked at her information on the computer and seeing that she had only entered the gate twice. He thought that she had recently been classified as an A rank, but even taking this into account, she had almost no experience. She had only entered the gate. A couple of times he had seen lower, but she would soon be demoted. The first rank of Awakened is based on the amount of mana. When the blue energy poured through the rifts, mana entered all people, but each absorbed a different amount. The more a body can store, the better abilities a person can have. Suth Association began to figure out how much mana each person has. Those who were able to master more than a certain amount were called Awakened, and then they began to divide them into ranks, depending on the amount of mana, of course. The rank is not fixed. Even if the rank is low, a hunter can go on dungeon race, and if he gains fame in the association, he can be promoted. Of course, the opposite happens. Tuja, at this time, handed the documents to the girl with a smile and said that she filled everything out, and she offered to help her with the application. As she have a partner, she excitedly replied that she did not, and she said that then she would write her down on the list of partners according to the rules. You need to go on raids in groups of 2 people. So far there were no requests for the Drank Gate, so she will have to wait a little. She asked if she could go alone. She replied that she could, but only if she had permission to enter alone. However, considering that she was registering, she did not have it. For this, you need Topaz. The test does she want to sign up for it? Ja became nervous and asked her to wait, and then the girl said that she needed to tell her something. In a month she will have a rank update. Ga, who was about to leave, froze in place at these words, and the girl continued saying that she probably saw the message, but in order to confirm her rank she either needed to have experience clearing a C rank dungeon or higher, or pass an A ranked reel. She thought the trial would suit her better. She would probably receive a message about it soon. She hoped she could do it. Ga excitedly thanked her, then left the association, and thought that it was difficult for her to even request a training gate, so she needed to make a request online. Coming to such a crowded place was crazy. She decided to come here because she thought she wouldn't be demoted. She pulled herself together, and remembering her experience slickling the dungeon, she thought that this was a D-rank gate, so something like this wouldn't happen again if she didn't rush. Everything would work out. Suddenly, a message came on her phone, and she nervously adjusted her glasses, thinking that they said she would have to wait for an invitation, but it had already arrived as expected, rank D. She was going to go alone anyway, so it didn't matter. She had to agree. Quickly, a new day had arrived, and she approached the rank E gate. She walked towards the portal hesitantly, and thought that she hadn't dressed like this for a long time. It was unusual for her. The MC, who became her partner, came up to her and asked her name, then introduced himself and said that he hoped they would get along. Ja bowed slightly to him and said that it was nice to meet him, and he smiled awkwardly and apologized to her for being late. They had to go already. She excitedly agreed and said that she had made a request, and then talked to the association staff, and at that time he thought that she was a ranger class hunter who had originally in rank A, but after she continually failed the tests, she became one of those demoted to rank C. But even under such conditions, she received the title of Goddess Archer, because after becoming a player should discover a talent within herself, and he knows what kind of talent it is, a talent that can be discovered within a self, even if one is not a player, and today he wants to awaken it in her. After that, they entered the dungeon and found themselves in a forest in the middle of the mountains, where goblins were roaming. A small group of goblins were scouting the area, and Gaia, who was hiding behind the bushes, quietly peeked out and thought, did they leave? Are they really monsters? It's good that she decided to buy this. She looked down at the bracelet and thought that this was equipment that sends the mana of monsters. She turned to her partner and apologized the signs that she was going to go alone. Is it okay if she does that? Killing herself, she would give him all the loot and compensate him for everything. He crouched down in response and told her not to worry. If she needed help, Sheshold, let him know he can at least create arrows. She stood up and thanked him, then pulled the arrow on the bowstring and aimed mentally, telling herself that everything is fine. She does not need to worry finding the right moment. She released the arrow, which left a magical light behind it, and then it approached the goblin, and when he turned around it pierced his head. The second goblin quickly moved out of the line of attack and took out his bow to shoot back, and behind them there was an explosion caused by the arrow, colliding with something, pulling the bowstring. Again Jaya released the arrow, but missed Junio. Meanwhile watched her and thought that he hadn't seen her fight before. She became a player, her pure destructive power is much higher. Than thought of an A rank, but it's meaningless if she can't aim. At this moment fired an arrow again and made a hole in Thibity of one of the monsters, after which she thought that one of the 3 arrows hit. This was her record. This way she can kill at least 4 more monsters. She needs to finish everything. With 2 shots, just as she was about to fire another arrow, she suddenly stopped, noticing one of the goblins blowing the horn warning others of danger. She didn't immediately understand what it meant, and then more goblins came to the clearing and she, feeling pressure from all sides, froze in place. Her bracelet beeped warning of danger, and she, looking around, noticed that she was surrounded. She was confused and nervously thought, where should she shoot, forward or backward? What should she do? At that moment the goblins behind her decided to attack, but suddenly a bright flash appeared in front of them. Many swords stuck into the ground, preventing them from passing, and Junio walked towards Ja, smiling, saying that he needed her help. She exclaimed in surprise, didn't he say that he was a D-rank creator? He replied that he was at a rank creator, and then his sword started to dissolve. And he said that it wouldn't last long, so he needed her helps. Turned to him and asked what should she do. He pointed his finger towards the monsters hiding behind the bushes, and told her to shoot. There, with all her remaining strength, she agreed and aimed again, thinking that she didn't know Waith was planning, but she would do it after that. She fired an arrow which flew forward at lightning speed. Leveling Gaviring in its path, she notified her partner about the shot, and asked what she should do next. He grabbed her hand and said that with the shot, she cleared the way. Now they need to run. At that moment, monsters ran towards them, and she was very surprised to see him running away from them and pulling her along with him.